All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And thank you very much for joining the Global Esports Executive Summit 2020. Now, before we begin, I'd like to share my screen for a second before we begin this keynote and ask you a very simple question to the people joining us from all over the world. What is COVID to esports in 1-2 words? Now, to answer that question, you can go to www.menti.com and use the code 5953361. This also should appear on your screen right now. Go to www.menti.com, use the code on the screen and answer the question in 1-2 words. What is COVID to esports? You can answer multiple times, submit multiple times. In the meantime, while you do that, I'd like to officially congratulate everyone for attending the Global Esports Executive Summit as the Global Programs Director here at IESF. We've worked very hard, all of the staff members and the teams, to ensure that GEES will be even better than previous years, even though it's online. I'd like to thank the Busan Metropolitan City and the Busan IT Industry Promotion Agency for their support for this event in this new and amazing Busan Esports Arena, which I am very happy to attend next year, hopefully, when all this COVID situation is over. So again, please go to www.menti.com and use the code 5953361. And in just 1 or 2 words, answer the question, what is COVID to esports? And this will connect me to the case study of the IESF 2020 World Championships. And I see that some answers being poured in as we speak. Someone wrote lag issues. Another person wrote viewerships. Viewership, that's a very important metric when considering the success or failure of an esports competition or any televised competition or content, actually. Brand exposure. Opportunity, a great word. So what is COVID to esports? Maybe it's all of these things. Maybe it's just 1 or 2 things. And I think that while we cannot fully answer the question, we can use IESF World Championship as a test case, as a case study for this question. And I think that I see some more answers dropping in. Doping, cheating. Another person wrote opportunity. Cool, very cool. So that's great, guys. Because my time is very short, I will proceed to the presentation. Easy access for fans is also a very great answer. So let's proceed to the case study of the IESF 2020 Esports World Championships and how this impacted COVID-19. So in a moment, you will be able to see the presentation on your screen. And basically what we're talking about today is how really the COVID-19 situation affected esports. And the way I'm going to answer that question is using my personal and our experience and my personal experience in hosting the IESF 2020 World Championships. So if we move forward to the next slide, we'll be able to see that just as an introduction to the World Championship, the only international esports competition for national teams usually took place between 6 and 7 days in host cities all over the world for 12 years now. Highly concentrated 6 to 7 competitive days with 500 participants, including players, officials from the participating national federations, and media representatives, journalists from all over the world that were attending, with some millions of viewers, especially focused in Asia, that are mostly tech-savvy young adults, usually male adults, but this is actually slowly but surely changing. So in the next slide, we'll also be able to see some history of the IESF World Championship for you, for those of you viewers and attendees that don't really know about the event. It started in 2009. Here we cover since 2012, where it was hosted in Cheonan, Korea, all the way to Kaohsiung, from 300 players to 500 players from 50 countries when we reached Seoul last year. And this year it was supposed to be happening in Eilat, Israel. Now, obviously, this was a very nice event, 5 to 6 to 7 concentrated competitive days. Then what happened? COVID-19 came, as we all know, and COVID-19 had impact, a big impact on the esports industry. And then, the go-to solution or the go-to response of a lot of event organizers, well, okay, we have to cancel / we have to postpone the event. And at IESF and jointly with the local organizing committee, the Israeli Sports Association, Maccabi World Union, and the city of Eilat, we decided to take a step back before we make big rush announcement of postponement and say, okay, maybe this is also an opportunity to revisit how the event looks like, how the event format is going to happen, and so on, and recreate it from scratch in a more digital version that is relevant to the COVID era, but something that will also go with us after the COVID era. Now, what were the challenges for doing an event when you have the COVID-19 situation? First of all, the initial November date, which actually was supposed to be now a few days before, is no longer viable, right? From March to April, we already knew there is no vaccine going to happen in 2020, and the global restrictions are very unlikely to be canceled in this time frame. So November didn't look very viable. At the same time, also 500 participants coming from all over the world, and I'm not even talking about fans or family members or whatever. I'm just talking about the participants. This is even just 500 is a very big number at this time. We used to talk about an event with tens of thousands of attendees. But now even this event, the Global Esports Executive Summit, everyone joins from online, even though it's hosted in the Boston Esports Arena. So that's also no longer viable. Now, a lot of people think, okay, let's do it online. But doing online in esports has its own challenges. For example, the operations are very, very challenging. In terms of when I want to do a match between, let's say, Germany and Italy, it's rather easy because those are neighboring countries. With a high-speed internet connection. But what happens when we need to do, because it's a world championship, we need to do a match between Korea and the United States? Then it's a much, much, much different situation, because current internet infrastructure in the world, even though those two countries are leading in internet infrastructure, it's still not strong enough to and fast enough to enable an online play between those distances. And then, at the same time, there's also the problem of the incentive. The incentive of the host city, that is usually the funding partner, the partner that brings most of the money to host the tournament, is lost. Because why would they invest in something that doesn't happen in their city? The same thing happens to sponsors, but with sponsors, even if they have some sort of benefit or incentive to invest in an online event, they still don't. Because of the COVID, they have a lot of marketing budget cuts, a lot of uncertainty in their planning moving forward. And the first thing that they usually cut is the sponsoring budget, because sponsorships is an adventure. It's something that is out of the ordinary for marketing agencies as well as for global corporations. And the sixth thing is players. We have 500 players, as I mentioned, 65 countries. We want to ensure they have the best experience. Can we do an online version with the best experience? Now, let's take a look at how the event was usually done in terms of the format and the steps that were taken in the next slide. Usually, it was very, very simple and straightforward. We had the announcement, which is usually the beginning of the year, January, February, March, April latest. And at this point, we announced the game titles, the days, the host city, everything, the format of the tournament, and so on. And then between July and September, usually, we have the nationals, each national member of IESF. Currently, we have 90 national members. They do their own national tournaments or selection process to determine who is going to represent them, who are the players are going to represent them in the World Championship. And then from there, straight jump forward to the World Championship directly. As I said, 6 to 7 concentrated competitive days with all the competitions happening together. Now, this format has its ups and downs. But let's see what we did this year. This year, we didn't do something that is super new, something that was never unheard of in the history of esports. But we did something that was very new to IESF, and we added the regional tournament between the national tournaments and the global finals. Now, both the regionals and the global finals, both of them are part of the IESF World Championship. Unlike the national tournaments, which are part of their own national league or national esports infrastructure, the regional and the global finals are part of the IESF World Championship tournament. The thing is that we created 12 regions across the world in Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, South America, and so on, where it made technical sense to create competitions between countries concentrated together geographically. And this enabled us two things. First, to create content so we don't have to cancel or postpone the games. We did those games in November and October to a tremendous success that we will see in the next slides. But before we go there, we already went there, but just I will finish the sentence. Yeah, there we go. We also enabled to decrease the amount of people coming to the physical event that we'll talk about in a second. Now, in order to support this kind of project, this kind of large-scale project, we had to create a global infrastructure. So as you can see in this slide, we had 4 studios all over the world. We had Tel Aviv, which is the headquarters of the local organizing committee for the event, as well as the studio for Africa. And we had Kuala Lumpur for Asia and Middle East, Paris for the European tournaments, as well as Buenos Aires for the North and Latin American tournaments. And this really enabled us to have a global operation to support this kind of tournament format, with tournaments happening all over the world, not just in terms of the broadcasting language or the local caster, but also in terms of the tournament operation team, the staff behind the operation of the tournament, speaking usually the local languages and being part of the local communities, which makes the players much more conveniently participating in the tournament. Now, when you have this kind of global operation, then we go to the question of what is the incentive of the host city, in this case, Eilat City, Israel, to invest in such an event, because why would they invest in something that is fully online and the money goes to Kuala Lumpur and Buenos Aires and Paris and so on. So we've sat down and discussed this with Eilat in length. And what we found is that there is an openness. There is an openness to understand a new potential that wasn't discussed before with this format that can enable a lot of benefits to the host city. For example, the increased viewership and the increased awareness to the city. A lot of people in this case don't know Eilat. Eilat is the #1 resort city in Israel. Maybe it's known in Europe, but other parts of the world, they don't really know it as a tourist destination. And in this way, we are able to show the world through the regional tournaments that are happening all over the world, in all over the time zones in the world, to much more people. And we'll get there in a second, how many people is that there is such a place that is called Eilat City. It's a resort place, and through videos and interactive content in the broadcast, we're able to showcase what Eilat is all about. That is one part. And the another part is that they don't lose the hosting privilege. Of course, hosting the event in the city, showing to those players and to those fans and to those people coming from all over the world, as well as joining online via the broadcast, what the city is all about and the unique fingerprint of the city is something that's super important to them. So the online version doesn't replace this. It's something that is added upon the hosting privilege of the city to host the event in their city. Now let's talk about numbers. I know that everyone wants to know if this project even succeeded, right? Because IESF was never the largest or the most notorious esports tournament in the world, although its global reach is more than people are aware of. But it was never the most well-known esports tournament in the world. The game titles were frequently changing, and the broadcast usually went simultaneously between several game titles, so it was hard to follow. So in this format, it's much easier to follow. It's also much easier to understand. There is a lot of more content. How did this impact the IESF World Championship? So in the next slide, we're able to see there was 180% increase in engagement on the IESF website and social media channels. Now, those social media channels existed before. Now, if we're talking about the viewership data, we've had 350% increase in viewership all across the IESF World Championship broadcasts. Now, this is only the viewership numbers, the average viewership numbers. If we look at the fact that we've had much more competition days, we took a 6 days event and turned it into a 2 months event. We are not even talking about the finals yet, which didn't happen yet, but only the mid-activity data that is talking about solely about the regionals. We're still looking at amazing growth. And then we have the media value of 520% increase in media value generated through our PR campaigns all over the world, mainly because we don't have just the followership and the coverage of the global esports media outlets, which was never following this event to a very large extent. But now we have a very nice followership from the press and the media of local communities of domestic media and outlets from 65 countries all across the world in a lot of languages that are spoken all across the world. And this creates this event not something that is only global, but it's global, but it's also local, because you are able to connect through your community, through your language, through your well-known national or regional media outlets. And this, of course, contributed to the 600% increase in awareness. Now, we already moved to the next slide. So I know that everyone wants to understand this increase. What does it mean in numbers? Because you can make up those numbers. So we actually went to an agency to collect data for us to understand what is the media value generated, how many impressions IESF generated globally. And for this year's alone, for AILA 2020, which is here you can see the amazing incentive for the host city, we've reached 30 million global impressions, global unique impressions all over the world, mainly through the press and the media outlets digitally from all over the world. Now, how does that happen? Exactly as I said before. We have more followership from the local and regional media partners that are following the event, writing about not only about the event, but their national teams for the event in local languages, and always including AILAT as the final host city, the host of the final games of the championships. Now, other impressions obviously came through Twitter and Facebook and YouTube, and to a lesser extent also Reddit and Instagram, but most of it came from the web. And based on our internal calculations of how much it would cost us if we had to pay for those impressions, then it would cost $14.5 million, which is the generated media value of the IESF World Championship this year. And this is actually a staggering number compared to previous years. Now, this is important, but a lot of people later ask, okay, those are impressions. Those are people that read about the event or find about the event in social media. How about the people who actually watch the event, which are the hardcore fan, let's say? There we have a very significant increase as well. As you can see in this next slide, you are able to see that we've generated this year over 60,000 average concurrent viewers, which are people that are watching simultaneously the event through the to the broadcasting network, digitally via Twitch and Huya, in English as well as in Chinese, but also in multiple TV channels, including Egg Network, all over Asia, and right now also all over North America, USA, and Canada. We've generated a total of 2 million total viewership so far, and this is expected to increase next year as well. So if we just summarize everything, in the next slide, you'll be able to see, we had reached that through this new plan for COVID, it proved a connected world. We saw that local audiences are much more interested in this event because of the regional tournament, but the reach remains global, and it becomes even more global as 65 countries participate in the event. At the same time, we were able to keep the players happy and the competitive integrity ensured with professional referees covering the event from all over the world. The sponsorship value of the partners that we were able to recruit for this event increased dramatically, as well as the media value, as you could see in the previous slide. I wish to thank you for your attendance in the event. If you have any questions, please let me know, and also thank our partners for doing this event together. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Ido, for that enlightening presentation. We'll now open the floor for questions, question and answer time. And so if you have any questions that you would like to ask Ido after his presentation, please feel free to leave them in the IESF YouTube channel chat. You can also submit them by going to GEES20.com and submit your questions that way as well. So go ahead and leave your questions, and we'll get to some of those questions and see what Ido has to say. Firstly, welcome to Busan, Ido. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Reed. I'm sorry that I'm not able to see you in person this year, but we'll have to wait until next year to really see the amazing new Busan Esports Arena and to have an even better edition of the Global Esports Executive Summit. But super excited to be here today.
Thank you very much, Ido. I can't wait for next year. And thank you for coming here to answer our questions. Let's go ahead and start with our first question, which is how can esports help to develop Israel, and how can it help promote peace in the world?
Well, you know that it's a very nice question, because peace and cooperation is actually one of the pillars of which we are building on this year, especially with the signing of the peace accord between Israel and the United Arab Emirates as well as Bahrain. And I'm sure that more countries in the Middle East will join this movement. We are looking at creating online versions, COVID-safe version of friendly matches of esports players between Abu Dhabi and Eilat, between the UAE and Israel. We've also invited all the countries from the Middle East, including countries which sometimes they have geopolitical problems with Israel, like Iran or Lebanon or Syria. They are all welcome to participate in the IESF World Championship in Eilat. And what I've seen is that it also increases not only the exposure to Eilat and Israel, but also the positive exposure and the positive sentiment to Israel. And really it helps us to show what Israel is really all about. And I'm very excited to host these players from all over the world in Eilat when it's permitted and allowed, and in the meantime to make these cooperation programs with them alongside with IESF and the regional partner.
Very exciting. Let's move on to our second question, and that is, does holding matches online instead of live in person create any challenges or concerns for athletes or for referees?
Of course, when the matches happen online and every player plays from their home or a local esports arena or PC bank or something, it creates the challenge for us as the body that is supposed to supervise the event to make sure the event integrity is ensured, in terms that we are not able to 100% oversee the actual arena they play on. So we don't know what their PC is, or the PlayStation, or what the technical situation is there. We have to take a lot of precautions to ensure that the actual players that are registered to the event are actually participating and not someone else, in the same sense that in a university, when you have to take an exam online, then you can just let someone which is much smarter than you to take it for you, and it's hard to catch this. So we also had to implement technologies to ensure that the integrity is reserved and maintained. But all credit goes to our head referees from Korea, as well as the regional referees from all across the world, that made a lot of hard work and a lot of effort to ensure the competitive integrity remains.
All right, thank you very much for that answer. We have another question coming in here, mentioning that you talked about some of the advantages created by holding the event online with increased viewership and awareness. So the question is, will IESF keep some of those changes for future World Championships, or how do you think that the future World Championships will look based on the way that this current World Championship is being handled?
Well, first of all, the short answer is absolutely. I think that the new format that we've discovered, let's say, again, it's not something that you have to be a genius to think about, and it's not something that didn't happen before, right? Online tournaments happen all the time. But on this scale, on this very large scale, it's very rare. And what we found is that not only it was the best way to overcome the COVID situation without canceling or postponing the event, but also it created more viewership, more traction, more awareness to the event, to IESF, to the host city, and it's a win-win-win-win situation to the fans as well, of course. So I think that definitely we will keep the format, but we will improve upon it. Maybe we are looking at regional events happening before the global events. Maybe we are looking at other contents that can be produced alongside the event as well. So definitely this discovery and this opportunity that was created, and I'm saying this honestly, due to COVID, we wouldn't do this if we didn't have to rethink the strategy here because of the COVID situation. We'll definitely keep that. And I hope that next year the event will become even bigger and better, not just the physical event in Eilat, but everything, the whole campaign, let's say, surrounding the event and the regional tournaments before the event and so on.
Yep. Very exciting. Looking forward to next year. We have a fourth question coming from online that says, do IESF's goals change when you are hosting a global online tournament compared to an offline tournament? If so, how?
Well, IESF goals are enshrined in our constitution, in our statutes, so they don't change, but I think that the implementation of the processes, of the moves that we are making to create a unified esports world, the understanding of what moves we should do maybe is slightly changing, and this is a positive thing because you don't want to be an organization that is stuck in an old mindset. You want to be an organization that is constantly changing and adapting to the new situation, to the new world. This is not only to be a good event organizer, which is one thing that IESF does, but it's also to be a good International Esports Federation that serves as a moderating and unifying body for the ecosystem. And I think that seeing how this works, we can also create guidelines and operational structures for other tournaments that may want to follow this lead and to cooperate with IESF. And I think that we will see something like this in the World Super League that was announced this morning in GEES, a very exciting event, as well as other regional events and national events as well happening throughout our member nations. So all in all, I think that the goals don't change, but the way that you reach those goals, the way that you implement the moves to reach those goals, we are adapting to the new situation.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that question, Ido. It looks like we have one more question coming in from online that asks, how do you think esports fans would react to artificial crowd noise added to live streams or broadcasts like is being done with football and some other sports? What if it were generated by fan reactions? What do you think of that idea, Ido?
Well, I think that it's a very interesting idea, and I have seen it in football, although it's very weird because, when you look at the football match, very shortly, I would say that Maccabi Tel Aviv played, which is a very leading football club in Israel, played a match a few days ago with this fan noise, let's say fan audience noise turned on, but you see that the seats are empty. So it's kind of created a weird viewership experience. I don't know if this really is a thing that should be done in esports, but I know that there are a lot of organizers and events experimenting and investigating this. I think that the goal is to create the best possible viewership experience with the fans, and if you can make it more interactive, that's probably where you need to go. So I think that interaction is the key, and if that's part of it, great. If not, maybe esports can find something else.
Thank you very much for your answer. That brings us to the end of our question and answer session. So thank you very much for your time here today, Ido. It's good to see you again.
Thank you very much.
And a big thank